All right, everyone, welcome back to B2B Growth. My name is Timothy Bauer, and I'm on the editorial team at Sweetfish. I'm joined today by Dylan Hay, the CEO of Hay Digital and one of our B2B Growth contributors. Today, we'll be talking about what SaaS companies need to know about PPC. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to jump into this episode and share as much value as I can with everybody listening.
Me too. I am so excited to get into this. So Dylan, can you give our listeners a little bit of context? What problems were you trying to solve when you first got into PPC?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. So to give some context to everybody listening, at Hey Digital, we manage PPC, paid advertising campaigns, specifically for SaaS and B2B businesses. And previous to setting up this agency about a year and a half ago, I've worked for a couple of other SaaS companies. So I worked at a company called Leadfeeder, which was a sales intelligence platform. And whilst I was there, we grew pretty aggressively. I joined maybe number 12 or 13, and within 12 months, we were up to like 50, 60 employees around the world in 12 different time zones or something like that. And previous to then, I was working at Hootsuite, like a larger SaaS business that had been through this explosive early stage growth and was now positioning more as an enterprise-focused company. And through both of those times, we were seeing obviously very different challenges from a fast-growing tech startup to a previous to that at Hootsuite, a tech company that had already been through that huge growth. But when I was at Leadfeeder, we were very heavily reliant on inbound marketing, our content marketing efforts to drive new leads and new awareness around the business and the brand. And over time, of course, we were introducing PPC into that mix. And now working with a variety of different SaaS companies, we see that the problem that we try and solve is, okay, if your SaaS business or B2B company is at a point where you're consistently bringing in new, whether it's trial signups, demos booked, calls with your sales team, whatever it might be, often that starts from content and from SEO focused activities. And once that's working, this can take a long time to scale up. So what other channels can you bring into the mix to help you drive new user acquisition? And for companies within this space, PPC is a very good channel to go to because it's very easily measurable and trackable, and can really provide to investors or senior management as well, like a very easy to follow mix of being able to just track everything from intro point to sign up and continuing on throughout that process.
Awesome. And you've made a great point about how important it is for these companies to be able to scale up. I like how you talked about the need for good content, but it takes time, obviously, for that content to be generating leads. And so PPC is a great way to scale that. Before we dive fully in, for the folks listening that aren't familiar with the acronym, Dylan, tell us what PPC is.
Yeah, so PPC just stands for pay-per-click. So if you think about Google ads, when people say PPC, often people think straight to Google and the Google platform because you've always paid on a pay-per-click method, right? It's like you're paying for the clicks that you're driving through. The way that we see PPC now, I kind of encompass all of the advertising efforts that we do under the umbrella of PPC, although technically not everything is PPC. Like it depends on how you have your campaign set up. So if you're going like old school, people will say, okay, PPC is just Google. And then if you're looking at social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc., people would call those paid social. But when I say PPC, I'm kind of grouping all of those together because this is something that we'll talk about either further on in this episode or if we do another one about how when you're doing advertising that you have to really think about this from all the way around your funnel and all the way around your marketing activities. You can't just focus on one platform. You have to think about how all the different platforms are aiding in the experience for someone when you're trying to get them to sign up or get on a call with your sales team, for example.
That's great. So when most people think about PPC, they just think of Google, but you're saying that in today's world, it's a much broader definition than just Google. All right, so Dylan, what are the biggest benefits of PPC for SaaS companies?
Yeah, really good question. So this depends at what stage your SaaS business is at. If someone listening to this is a very early stage SaaS company, maybe you're bootstrapped up until this point, or maybe you've just raised your seed round of funding, PPC can be a really good channel to test and expand into potential new markets. So for example, we have a couple of companies that we work with who are pretty new on the scene, and whilst they're building out their content marketing efforts, those can take, let's say, 6, 12, 18 months to come to fruition in terms of driving lots of website visits and stuff like that. PPC for companies like that can be a really good opportunity to be very specific about who you're putting yourself, your brand, your business in front of, being very targeted with that. And that therefore helps you to test new markets and to expand very quickly, test messaging, etc. So for early stage, like bootstrap businesses, I would say that would be the kind of main value prop. However, at the same time, I always recommend that if you are very early stage, I don't think PPC should be your first channel that you really dive deeply into. My recommendation is to make sure, especially for SaaS companies and B2B companies, my recommendation is to really focus on content and brand first. And the reason I say that is because when you have a brand that resonates with people, when you have content that resonates with people, it makes the job of your advertising much easier. So a great example of this is Drift, the company that many of us in this world like know and love. I was talking with Bill King, who's their paid acquisition and SEO manager, a couple of days ago on my podcast, and he was telling me that his job is so much easier at Drift than anywhere else because of the brand recognition that they have. So their conversion rates are better in their ads. They end up paying a little bit less as well. And so my focus for early stage companies is to always focus on content first, because that's also a more sustainable channel longer term without having to constantly put money into it. But when we start talking about mid to kind of late stage SaaS companies, once you've got your content marketing funnel in place, let's say you're driving tens or hundreds of thousands of website visits every single month, and now you want to find other scalable channels, other scalable acquisition channels. This is often really important to investors and to senior leadership teams. PPC is a really good channel to go into because, again, similar to the early stage businesses, you can be very specific and targeted with who you're putting your ads in front of. So you can track everything throughout the funnel as well, which helps. But it can be just a top-up channel alongside those other content efforts that you're doing and like your sales team and whatever else it might be. And then the third thing to add into that is, I know I said I wouldn't approach PPC as being like your main channel from the very beginning, but I do think a quick tip for anyone listening to this is that you should always, at the very minimum, no matter what stage you are at, make sure you have your remarketing ads set up, because those can be very cost effective. Like they cost next to nothing and it's very high converting. So within a B2B sales cycle or a SaaS sales cycle, everyone listening to this will know that you need to be in front of your target buyer like 8 to 16 times, I think the statistic is, before they're ready to make a purchasing decision. And if you leverage remarketing ads on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, these are just more ways that you can show a relevant message to those people and make sure they remember you and your brand for a very low cost. And often these are the campaigns where you'll see the highest return on investment too. So you can do that on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, like Google search. You can set up remarketing campaigns, Google display, you can have remarketing campaigns, YouTube, etc. And often you don't need high budgets for those because the audience sizes are pretty small. So that would be kind of answering that question of like, okay, why is PPC good for SaaS and B2B companies? Those are just a few top level reasons why, and just a quick tip for everyone listening to make sure you have those remarketing ads set up no matter what stage you're at.
That's awesome, Dylan. Wow, you've really given us like a full spectrum explanation of the benefits. For marketing leaders that don't have a background in PPC, what questions should they be asking as they start to build their PPC strategy?
That's a really great question. So there's a couple of different ways to look at this. I guess it depends whether, when you're building that strategy, whether you're hiring someone to help you execute on that or whether you're trying to do it for yourself. If you're looking at other agencies, contractors, freelancers, whatever it might be, or even employees that you're looking to bring into the team, I would always be asking questions around what the purpose is of these ads. Like if you're talking to an agency or an employee potentially, and the number one thing they default to and talk about is click-through rates, impressions, conversions, like it's not the worst thing in the world, but a better sign is someone that's really focused on the business or really focused on important conversions. So with SaaS companies that we work with, usually there's only 2 or 3 metrics that we're really focused on and driven towards. And that is how many people have confirmed booked a call with somebody on the sales team, how many people have confirmed signed up to their 14-day free trial, and how many of those sales calls have turned into revenue at some point for the business. So when you're thinking about planning out your strategy, you always want to look to that. Like what's the purpose of the ads that you're running? What are you optimizing for? Don't just take the easy way out and start trying to optimize all of your campaigns for awareness or driving traffic, unless that's what you want to do. But we're very conversion focused with the way that we do things, because that's how, as a SaaS marketer, founder, senior executive, that's how you're going to see the best results to report back to the wider business. And then I would also just think about the different funnel stages. So we might talk about this either later on today or in another episode, but when you're building out PPC campaigns or any paid advertising campaigns, typically a mistake that we see a lot of the time is companies not segmenting their campaigns. So what they will usually have, if they're new to this, is they'll have what's called a branded campaign set up. So that will be making sure that anyone searching for your company name sees your ads specifically and making sure that your competitors aren't like hijacking your traffic. And then the second campaign we see is people having then unbranded search terms set up. So anything unrelated to the branded name. Now, this is okay, but best practice would be to make sure that your campaigns are actually segmented by funnel stage. So for example, you want to have a different campaign for your bottom of funnel buying intent, like buying ready keywords. That wants to be in a different campaign to your top of funnel keywords. And the reason being is that you want to let Google or whichever platform you're running your ads on, you want them to be optimizing towards the right kind of people and the right kind of data and driving traffic through the keywords that are working in the best way. And if I'm running a campaign with lots of top of funnel keywords and lots of bottom of funnel keywords in the same campaign, everything can get a little bit confused. So I would make sure you separate those out. And that's what I would think about when you're building out your strategy is, okay, what funnel stage are we targeting people at? And how does the content that we're showing them in the ads reflect that? And what's this person's experience like? Because it's great. Anyone can pay money and drive traffic to a web page. But if the web page experience isn't smooth and isn't set up well to aid that conversion, like you want to fix that before you start spending money on PPC. Or if someone searches for, let's say, I don't know, podcast recording software, but then the ad copy that you show them is actually related to podcast editing software, for example, like that's not a smooth experience for someone. You want to make sure that when you are building out that strategy, every step throughout the process, from someone making the initial search to hopefully signing up for your product or getting on a call with your team, you want that to be as smooth and as consistent as possible all the way throughout the funnel.
Today's growth story is about Sumo Logic, a cloud-based log management and security analytics company whose platform makes tracking log data across various platforms and integrations a breeze. And when Sumo Logic needed to raise brand awareness across sub-industries, they turned to Directive. Directive took on the task of elevating Sumo Logic's enterprise and mid-market brand awareness and making the brand connections with other applications they needed. The brand trust Directive built drew scores of new customers to purchase Sumo Logic products with confidence. In just one quarter, Directive's content strategy increased impressions by almost 40%. And year over year, keyword rankings in those coveted top 3 spots went up by a whopping 175%. All thanks to Directive's content strategy efforts. And if you want to learn how to drive these types of results for your clients, you need to check out Directive's Digital Marketing Course Institute. Step by step, click by click, Institute teaches you all of the skills you need to launch your own successful digital marketing campaigns. Sign up today at directiveconsulting.com/institute and get your first 4 lessons on us. Once again, that's directiveconsulting.com/institute to get 4 free lessons from the pros. All right, let's get back to the show.
I am excited to continue to talk strategy, what metrics to be focused on, being funnel-minded in your keywords. But before we do a deeper dive into all of that, let's cover a few basic terms for anyone who's less initiated. So in PPC, there are things called ad networks. Tell us about the popular ad networks and what are some of the differences between them?
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of touching on what I talked about a little bit earlier on when we say that, okay, traditionally PPC being this definition of pay-per-click, so that encompasses different ad networks or platforms, however you want to call them. So for example, that would be Google will be an ad network, but within Google, we have Google Search, we have Google Display, and we have like YouTube, for example. Another ad network, if you want to call it that, would then be Facebook. And of course, there's different placements within Facebook. So are you showing your ads on the newsfeed, in stories, in the marketplace, etc. Then we have things specifically for SaaS and B2B. I'm thinking the other popular ones are LinkedIn. LinkedIn has always had an advertising product. It has never been the best. It's definitely getting better since they had the acquisition by Microsoft a while ago. They're investing a lot more into their ads networks, and it's definitely improving. So if you are in B2B or SaaS, I would start to explore LinkedIn a little bit more, but we find that that's still often more expensive than, let's say, Google or Facebook or Instagram, paid social. And then the other core ones to mention for most people listening to this is probably going to be Capterra. So one of the review platforms, Capterra advertising can actually be very cost effective and very well converting. So the reason being is that on the Capterra network, you're advertising to people who are actively searching for software reviews. That's what their platform is all about. So if they see an ad from you on a review platform and they click through, there's a much higher probability that they are probably going to convert into a sign up or a sales call. There's also G2 Crowd. That one is a little bit less kind of self-service. There's annual contracts that you go through with G2 Crowd to advertise on there. And to be honest, for like what we look after for most of our customers, those are the channels where we see the main success for most SaaS companies and B2B tech companies for sure.
Awesome. So now let's talk quality score. What is quality score? How do SaaS companies win as it relates to quality score?
Yeah, really good question. So quality score is one of those metrics within a Google Ads account, within a Google search account. Technically, you now see quality scores in Facebook ads accounts as well, but for the purpose of this, we'll focus on Google. And quality score is Google's way of essentially telling you whether you're doing what they want you to do, right? And they want your quality scores to be as high as possible. You want your quality scores to be as high as possible because the more quality that Google sees in your ad, the more they're going to serve it to people. Therefore, the more conversions you're going to get, the lower your costs are going to be as well. So quality score is a really important metric to focus on. I know earlier on in the interview, I said, hey, when you're planning out on strategy, if someone just talks about quality score, avoid those and go for the people that talk about conversion and important metrics. And I totally stand by that. But in this case, quality score is one of those like individual metrics that as an agency we look at, but we don't really need to tell you as the client about this too much kind of thing, right? This is something that just goes without saying. You should be focused on quality score. We actually have a blog post on our own website, on the Hey Digital website, about 10 ways that you can improve your Google Ads quality score. So if you were to just search for Hey Digital Google Ads quality score, you'd probably find that pretty easily. But essentially, Google with their quality score, they evaluate 3 different aspects of your ad campaign. So it's ad itself, the keywords that you're targeting, and the landing page experience. So the experience that the user has once they click off of your ad, because that's important to Google as well. They don't want you to be sending people to a bad landing page. So to kind of try and sum this up pretty quickly as to what you should be looking for, this is where it's really important to take this kind of funnel specific approach to your advertising, because if your ad copy is targeting a bottom of funnel keyword, it's going to be very different to top of funnel, right? Top of funnel is very educational content, whereas bottom of funnel ad copies, you want to be focused on trying to get somebody to make a decision and being very specific to what they're searching for and what they're seeing in the ad, and making sure that ties into what they see on the landing page as well. So some quick ways to improve your quality score is to make sure that your ad copy aligns with the search term or what people are searching for, to make sure that the landing page experience is relevant to the search terms as well. So if someone's searching for, I'll use the same example again, podcast editing software, you don't want to send them to a landing page that's about podcast recording software. Small things like that can make a difference to your quality score. Make sure you're also using the keywords and search terms within the headlines on your landing page. This is something that's really important. And just a couple other tips that you can do is you want to make sure that you can start to match the intent of the keywords, like I said earlier on. So let's say you were targeting a competitor comparison post, for example. Let's say we were targeting a keyword like your name versus your competition's name. So let's just say Freshdesk versus Zendesk. You want to make sure that all throughout that process, in the ad copy, you're relating to someone that's going to be in the mindset of searching for one thing against another. And on the landing page, you have that similar kind of experience as well. So those are like me trying to wrap up a few quick ways that you can improve your ad quality score. It's a very, very important metric, but it's not something that you should get stuck in too much. Like if your quality scores are low, don't let that stop you from doing other things and doing other testing. But it's something that as time goes on, as you want to take your results to the next level, you really want to start improving those quality scores as you go.
I love that, Dylan. I love that you highlighted getting into the mindset of the searcher's intent and making sure that what you're delivering is a good match to their intent. Let's dive a little bit into click-through rates. Tell me about click-through rates at a high level, and what would be considered good click-through rates for a SaaS company What can SaaS companies do to get better click-through rates?
Yeah, really good question. So super top level click-through rate is, okay, what percentage of people that see your ad then click on your ad and go through to the landing page that you're directing them to, right? So when you're running ads, especially on Google, you're charged on a PPC, a pay-per-click model. So you're only going to be charged if someone does click on that ad, but you want as many people as possible to click on that ad within reason, right? Because you want to make sure that people see your ad and they're interested in it. So when you're running Google ads, you're going to be competing against other people. There's going to be other companies that are trying to grab somebody's attention for the exact same keyword, right? Like we see a lot of the bottom of funnel buying intent or competitor comparison keywords, for example. You can be up against sometimes 8 to 15 different competitors all trying to get that click from someone. And this is where things like quality scores, click-through rates, and everything else come into play, because Google wants to serve the ad that's seeing the best results. So a few ways that you can improve click-through rate kind of ties in very smoothly to what we were saying earlier about improving your quality score, is making sure that the experience is very much dialed into the intent of the searcher. This is one thing that's really, really key, but also just making it attractive to click through onto the ad. So maybe there's a few tips that I can share really quickly. And we also have a blog post on this on our site as well. If you just search for Hey Digital PPC ad copy, there's another post of maybe 10 or 12 different ways. But a few things you can quickly implement to improve your click-through rates is start to improve and include social proof for some credibility. So small things like #1 rated knowledge-based software if you're a knowledge-based software, or you can talk about the number of reviews, like 5-star reviews that you have, for example, how many customers you have. We do small things like trusted by over 40,000 customers. Something as small as that can help improve the click-through rates because it's a small piece of social proof. Use emotional triggers in your ads as well, rather than just the same boring copy that everybody is used to. You want to stand out a little bit. So try and play to people's emotional tendencies. If someone's searching for a comparison between two tools, you want to really latch onto that and know that they're about to make a buying decision, or they're looking for how one thing stacks up against the other. So play yourself off against the competition, for example. And then just some things that you can also do is making sure that you're including the keywords that people are actually searching for, making sure they're included in the ad copy, because then it improves the quality scores as well and the relevant scores. And if I'm searching for podcast video editing software, podcast or recording software, I want to see that in the ad copy itself as well. So those are a few ways that you can kind of make some quick changes to bring those in and to get some better click-through rates. And then you also asked me what would be a good click-through rate. Now, it's a fairly difficult question because click-through rates really vary depending on industry to industry, depending on the intent of the campaign. So for top of funnel keywords, you're obviously going to see a lower click-through rate than real high buying intent keywords. The way that we structure things is we always aim for a minimum of we're not happy until we get at least a 5 to 6% click-through rate on our ads. Often when you first start, you're probably going to see numbers like 3%, maybe 4%. And with some ads, you'll maybe even see 20%, 30%, but it all depends on the volume, the amount of people that are seeing those ads as well. But if you want to set a benchmark of, okay, I really should try and get this to at least this point, I would say between 5 and 7%. If you can get it to that, then you're going to be seeing a lot better results than someone that's got a 3% click-through rate, for example.
Awesome. Dylan, could I just really quickly ask you to double click on emotional triggers for our audience? What are some examples of this? What are you talking about here?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So I can dive fairly deep into some ideas for how people can use emotional triggers. So you have to think about someone's intent when they're searching, and people are now so used to seeing ads on every single platform. And within the B2B world, we can often be very bland with our copy, right? We can take the safe route very often. And when you're paying to put yourself in front of somebody, you want to give yourself the best possible chance to invoke emotion in them. So if you want to become good at PPC copywriting, you have to use emotional triggers in your ad copy. So these can be things like making sure that you start to layer in things around maybe instant gratification or a loss aversion or pride. So it could be something like, okay, get the success that you deserve, really diving into something like that. Or it can be become the smartest marketer in your team and things like this, where it's kind of playing to someone's ego a little bit, I guess, within the ad copy. So most people will go down the route of okay, sign up now or something like that. But if you go with only the smartest marketers sign up now, or things like that, those are the kind of emotional triggers that you can lean into. And if you're targeting real bottom of funnel keywords around loss aversion, maybe, like we're not, with the situation in the world right now, I don't know when this episode is going to be going out, but we're not playing into the worldwide situation at all in any of our ad copies, because I don't think that's the right thing to do. But you can play into, let's say you have a tool that's a project management software or something like that. You know that right now more people are having to switch their teams to be working remotely. So there's more need for tools like that. So you can do some kind of education in your copy and lean on the emotional triggers of like finding it difficult to manage your team remotely and things like that. So that's what we mean when we say use emotional triggers in your ad copy, rather than just copy and pasting some of the copy from your features page on your website into the ad.
Right. I think those are some tremendous examples, Dylan. And I think that's a great place to pause here. I'm excited to continue talking to you. We're going to do a deep dive on strategy. We're going to talk about metrics and keywords. So stay tuned in for part 2 of my interview with Dylan Hay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I hate it when podcasts incessantly ask their listeners for reviews, but I get why they do it, because reviews are enormously helpful when you're trying to grow a podcast audience. So here's what we decided to do. If you leave a review for B2B Growth in Apple Podcasts and email me a screenshot of the review to james@sweetfishmedia.com, I'll send you a signed copy of my new book, Content-Based Networking, How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. We get a review, you get a free book. We both win.